getting on YouTube here. All right. Hi, Sharon. Thanks for joining from New Zealand. I suppose it's probably really late there. Hi, Julie. Hi, Janet. Thank you. Hi, Jody. Very good. We'll start in just 1 minute. Hi to everybody on YouTube. Welcome to our special circle call that we do every month on our last Sunday of the month. It's August, the end of August 2020, and here we are coming into fall, a very special time, a midpoint between the two very powerful solstices. It's coming up soon, and we meet every Sunday on the last Sunday of the month around this time usually. So a couple of admin things. I wanted to invite you to come and join me. We've moved the circle community, and we have an online platform on Slack, and it's very active. I love being on there. A lot of beautiful support there. We're doing a lot of activities inside the community, such as small circles for self-inquiry and meditations, and a lot of beautiful work is being done, and I want you to come and join us. We've changed our prices to make it easier for people, and so we are doing a 3-tiered price range here. For yourself is $8, and then you can actually offer a scholarship to one of our community members. We do have some folks who can't afford $8 right now, and we want to make sure we never turn anyone away. And we've moved the whole community to come be part of 12 Stars Publishing and the Learning Collective there, and so that can support that too. But we're really excited about the possibility of being able to have more people on, and we'd love you to come. And if you need a scholarship, just email me and I'm happy to help you. We don't ever want to turn anyone away. And right now, support is the number one thing that we all need at the moment. And the more, the merrier. So I hope that you'll join me. If you go to 12starspublishing.com, you'll see the circle at the top in the menu. Come check it out and come join us there. And through the Learning Collective on this beautiful new platform that this wonderful team has put together, there's going to be a 7-day retreat coming up in mid-September. And I believe the actual date is the 15th. Let me make sure that's true. No, it starts on the 18th. And so the deadline to sign up for this online retreat is the 15th, but the retreat starts on the 18th. If you'd like to get some readings done, you'll receive 5 readings if you want to be part of the core group of 12 that will receive readings throughout the week. 2 of those days will be just teaching. If you would like to instead listen to the readings that will be happening, which can be very powerful and profound, and usually incredibly practical and relevant, then there's a different position. So I'd love you to come and join me you can either come join me there's a few spots left for the Core 12 who will receive readings throughout that whole week of the equinox week, or you can come and listen. And that can be a really beautiful time together. I hope that it will be magical. I have a good feeling about it. So come and join us if you'd like to see that as part of your September experience. That's also on 12starspublishing.com. If you look under courses, you'll see the 7-day retreat and the options and the brochure there. So that's my admin for the moment. And I just want to ground with you right now and just take a deep breath and be together and feel the presence of the people. I want you to notice how formless the energy is, how much more formless it really is. You can't see formlessness. You can't clock formlessness with your mind. You can feel what's going on. I want you to feel the group here together right now. We're public on YouTube at the moment, and we're on Zoom too. And we've got over probably about 70 people and perhaps more that will join us. And that's a good amount of souls, all awake, all over the world, all wanting more light in their lives. And we can feel that more and more as our bodies acclimatize to formlessness, this 9th dimensional energy that is pure love is available because the earth is actualizing it. She's embodied it, and now she's actualizing it, and she's inviting us to come with her into formlessness. And this light, it gently and yet persistently opens us up, and it reveals in the body, especially the emotional body, all of the different structures that need to dissolve, that want to dissolve in love. And that is something that's happening to all of us personally. And so many of you know I love to share what's personally been going on in this month, and then help it to be relevant, to point a good vantage point to the universal. So we take the personal to the universal, because there is nothing personal. It's always universal. But when one person goes through something, usually everyone else is having some version of it happen in their life. And in this case, I highly believe that it's definitely relevant. So last month we met at the end of June, right after the solstice. It seems ages ago, really, because time right now is packing in all of the intensity of change, nice and magnified for each moment. And it's intense. In June, I was able to finally get back into my body. And this was very challenging for me because I'd never been in my body. So how do you even know what that feels like? Being in the body is so necessary right now. Doing as much as you can, even if it's radical, to get back in fully 100% into this body is necessary, because the rules have changed. No longer is this experiment in consciousness mental. It has evolved from the mental, and now it is an experiment in embodiment. So we're not here to attain these high states of oneness with each other, with source, just through the mind anymore. Aestheticism is not necessary and is not beneficial any longer. It's full body enlightenment, or I like to say full body samadhi, that we're shooting for here, which means that we're going to see a lot more people who will step into high states of consciousness who have very regular lives. and are not really the normal type of person you would see attaining states like that, such as moms and dads, people with careers, householders. There's more and more of us who will continue this path of consciousness and put that at the fore for ourselves, but also our families. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had this beautiful goal in mind to not only attain states of wonderful, wondrous, loving consciousness with Source, but to bring our families with us, to bring our friends with us, and to lead the way through embodiment? Well, here's one of the most important reasons why getting in the body is key. And this is where I'll share what has happened to me over the past month. It's never boring, that's for sure, right? So, getting into the body, I didn't give myself any breaks. I didn't give myself time to integrate. I had planned a trip immediately to go visit my parents. And so I went and visited my family and started having some pretty serious reactions physically. My heart was palpitating constantly, it wouldn't stop. No matter what I would do, I quit coffee for a little bit, didn't help. I tried everything. My body was trying to give me a clue that I had access to something I had not had access to before because I had not been in my body. And so my heart was trying to tell me something, and of course I had no idea what was going on. Then I go home and I start to feel sicker and sicker. And my daughter's birthday came around and I was not feeling well. And I realized something was pretty bad going on, but I still didn't know what was happening. Now, normally, if I had really thought about it and paid closer attention, it would have been apparent to me that my body was accessing trauma. And all illness, all of it, all illness has an emotional component to it, always. The physicality of illness is the outcome of trauma and ego and structures that go on in the body through the emotional body, through the mental body. And so it's not sometimes till way later that it turns into physical illness, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. All physical illness is simply an outcome of something that's actually mental and emotional. And so that's something to consider as you face your body's changes over the next several months. So I began to fall extremely ill and figured out that I had shingles. And it laid me out. It laid me out. It was so painful. If any of you've had that, I don't wish it on anyone. I've never been more sick. And the last time I was sick like that was when I had chickenpox. So shingles is usually when the chickenpox virus resurfaces. It resurfaces because the body's stressed out. And so lo and behold, I had created the perfect situation to go really deep into worthlessness. Months and months ago, beginning of the year, I asked Source God, please help me to process my worthlessness once and for all. And ever since then, it's been this horrible, miserable ride running through all of these layers of worthlessness. The first 6 months, it was mental and emotional. But then I got into my body and accessed all the physicality of it. I accessed the physical trauma of it, of all of what I've gone through in my life. And I hadn't realized it. So my heart was trying to tell me, because the heart remembers this stuff. It remembers every detail. And it's been separated from me for so long, the whole time I've been alive, that the heart couldn't really do much more than go into panic, have palpitations 24/7 to let me know, hey, you've got to manage this. This is the foundation of the worthlessness you face. So, what happened? This beautiful, amazing illness called shingles, or this virus called the chickenpox virus, resurfaced. And it said, hey, remember what happened to you when you were a kid. It pointed to the origin of my worthlessness. When I was 5 or 6, I got really bad chickenpox. It was so bad that I couldn't go to my first ballet recital that I'd worked really hard for. I had my special costume ready made for me and everything, and I missed it because I was too sick. And everyone felt so sorry for me, so they made a video of the recital for me so I could watch it. And I played it over and over and over again while laying on the ground suffering, and created quite the complex for myself. I was so young, I didn't really know what I was grieving about. I was grieving that I didn't get to do this thing that I so desperately wanted to do, which was be a ballerina. But I was also grieving the loss of my beauty because my face began to get scarred up from the chickenpox, and I still have lots of scars all over my face. Well, that set me up for a cycle of worthlessness and self-hatred that was very subtle. And then it built up. And as a teenager, I became an anorexic. I got really sick with acne that was so bad it scarred my face even more. It was so bad that I would walk into the kitchen in the morning and my dad would start to cry because my face looked like hamburger. And it got worse and worse. The self-hatred just continued to build from this foundation. But I'd never realized exactly where it came from until this magnificent virus showed me. So, being in deep physical pain and having the shingles actually show up right below my heart, under the solar plexus, and all across my abdomen, that showed me where I was holding all of this energy of worthlessness, where the linchpin, and that's a good word, linchpin of worthlessness was, right? Many beautiful things have unfolded through this illness, and I was sick for about the whole month. I'm only just now better, really, 100%. Thank God. In the meantime, while I was super sick in the middle of it, I had to teach a 3-day long intensive on non-judgment. Now, usually my teaching style is very fast and it's packed in with lots of stuff, but there was no way I was going to be able to do it like that. So I told everyone I'm going to slow this down a lot because I have to. And everyone who joined us said it was one of the best things that they'd taken part of because it was so much slower and gentler, and they could really absorb what I was sharing. And it changed my mind about my teaching style, and it shifted all of my consciousness around my academic self, because the academic in me really existed in order to subvert the worthlessness that I had created. I became a perfect student because I was building up my self-esteem in the academic arrogance to try to balance out just how much worthlessness I had. So I became a master's student and a theorist and did things that no one else had ever done. And I built a huge amount of arrogance around that whole entire decade of my life. So chipping away at arrogance was easy because it was fresh. But then getting through that to find that, hey, there's an equal amount of worthlessness here, not just arrogance. And being tasked to look at that finally, to go through the arrogance into the depths of why I had even built that much arrogance in the first place. And I still couldn't find the linchpin, even after 6 months of hard work, until I got into my body. So the lesson being, slow down. Slow down. We have the moment, and that's all we've got. The past is gone. The future, it only exists in our hopes. And we can create it if we're willing to be ourselves. Go into your body, talk to your toes, talk to your knees, talk to your hips and your gut, talk to your heart, talk to your arms and your neck and your voice, talk to your face and your head and your mind. Your body is here for you. It is changing form every moment in order to serve your soul. The body's form is manifest through the intelligence of the soul. So when the soul gets brighter and lighter and wiser, the body changes. When the soul is willing to welcome things like shingles, chickenpox, illness, physical pain, and willing to look at that and go into it, welcoming the layers of frequency being maintained there, much of which is really uncomfortable when we're willing to just look at it. Your powerful attention is like a laser. By simply being willing to gaze at something and accept it as existing, there is a dissolving that occurs because your soul is part of source. And that pure light does want to purify and support the body. What gets in the way and what distorts that light is our trauma and, of course, our ego. And ego is created because of trauma. Ego is created because of trauma. When that trauma builds up enough, it gets solid. And that ego structure is there. Then being very dense, even though it's made of light, it's so dense that it looks dark, it feels heavy. And then by gazing at it, by looking at worthlessness or arrogance, by looking at victimhood or tyranthood inside the self, these precious polarities, which we can use to determine the nature of that ego and trauma, by looking at abundance and scarcity within yourself and all of the traumas you've been through, recapitulating all of your energy. It's like bringing all of your pieces back and then really being able to dissolve through attention any structure that's blocking your soul's light from nourishing your body with love, from beaming and radiating unconditional love to the whole of the body. Now, this is exactly what the earth is doing. The earth also is radiating her love. It's changing the face of the planet and us along with it. And so the biggest lesson that I learned from this past month of deep pain and illness is that first, there's a lot stored in the physicality of the body, a lot of memory that ought to be examined. And all you have to do is ask to feel love. Stand in the energy of love. Notice where your body resists it. So when I was loving my body, I had all this resistance showing up, especially in the area of my abdomen. And I have all this resistance in different sections of the body where I'm holding myself separate from being loved, which is what worthlessness is. I don't deserve to be loved, right? So just notice the resistance and then go into it. Go into your abdomen or your heart. Go into your arm or your foot, wherever the resistance shows up. Easy practice to do. Ask for the frequency of pure love to be like a waterfall that you can stand in, and notice then any resistance in your body. Where does the body resist such a thing? That is where you need to put your precious attention. And when you put your precious attention on it and welcome it, I welcome this pain in my abdomen. I welcome this. I welcome this worthlessness in my body. I welcome it in my hands and my arms. I welcome you. Worthlessness can't hurt you. It's a frequency. It's consciousness under pressure. That's all any separation frequencies are, or separation emotions are, like worthlessness, arrogance, and everything in between. They're simply frequency to learn from. Immense amount of learning going on by going into worthlessness and examining it and allowing it to unfold. Now, why would this be the most important thing we can do at the moment? Because all of us want to see change. And change is something I've studied for about 20 years now, culture change in specific. And I do futurism and theoretical work around culture change and how to create culture change faster. So let me give you a hint about how you can create change in the world faster. And that's a good thing to know. So in order to create change more quickly, you have to change what's called superstructure and infrastructure at the same time. In simpler terms, you've got to change your beliefs and ideas, your mind and your emotional body. The things that we might say are like oil on the water. Language, the way you talk to yourself, the way that your thoughts run the show or not. What kind of thoughts are they? Are they thoughts that are cruel to you or cruel or judgmental about anyone else in this world, whomever they might be? Judgmental about any group at all? And those kinds of dense thoughts, they have to dissolve. Where do we want them to be? In the present, very focused, very still. We do that by emotionally processing, doing that dissolving and welcoming. And we do it by meditating and praying. It stills the mind, it stills the emotional body to process and meditate and contemplate. And then, of course, we need to change our language. Is the language that you're using compassionate? Are you shutting people down without knowing it? Ask for the people around you to help you remain accountable. I really like it when my friends and my partner in the moment say, hang on a second, you just cut me off, or you just shut me down, or you're being judgmental to me right now. Especially in the moment, in the context, then I can shift and I can make a change. I can dissolve it. I can move forward and make sure that it doesn't traumatize me and everybody else. So we can be accountable to one another compassionately, right? Because we want each other to be happier, lighter, better people, better versions of ourselves, more pure souls, and less ego and trauma. And then infrastructure, the physicality of change is incredibly important. Does your material life match your internal life? Most of the time, people really underestimate how powerful the physical place that they are in really is. Humans modify physical reality more than any other being on this planet. The only one that's even comparable is beavers. And beavers build dams and they can change their environment a lot for their benefit, but they're the only ones that can even be compared to what humans do. Nobody else even gets close. And so humans, we've forgotten that when we modify the physical world, it changes everything else. It changes the internal world. It changes your mind. It changes your emotions and your body. So when you've moved from one house to another, that time of adjustment and acclimatization, integrating the whole move itself, unpacking, trying to feel at home. This is what we're doing on an earth right now, who is increasingly formless, who is emanating formless light. Our home, the physicality of our home is dissolving. It's dissolving. And that means much of the structures that we're used to, the social structures and the political, economic structures, they're not going to be supported by the beliefs and ideas, the dreams and hopes, the language, or the infrastructural needs of the people anymore. And that's increasingly apparent. Because people can't remain miserable in this system that's global any longer. They will not stand for it. They're getting increasingly frustrated with the lack of positive change. And that frustration builds, it turns into language that is quite hateful. And so I want to give us a different path. Let's see this as a true time of immense and swift change. Shift your language not into one that is frustrated, not into one that is divided or full of hate, but that is compassionate and universal, knowing that we don't have a clue exactly how we're going to get to the changes we want. We just know that it's really got to change. And let me point out infrastructure as well. In June, I was talking to you from my parents' home, and it was actually about food. I addressed the issue of food, and infrastructure includes that. Where do you get your food? I encouraged you to do local as best you can and to try to eat as fresh and wholesome as possible so that that can support the culture of fresh, good quality, natural food. Your inner culture. Infrastructure is also housing and shelter. It's also the land itself and the way that you get your material needs met. Do you go to a store? Do you go to a local market? Is it your own yard that you're getting food from? And how are you meeting your needs? So infrastructure is where much of the trouble we've seen has begun, because we've separated ourselves from the earth, put ourselves into these houses up off the planet, right? Apartment buildings. We've crowded ourselves into concrete jungles, and all of that's crumbling. It's no longer pleasant to live in an inner city anymore. All of the big cities in the United States are having a lot of problems, immense dramatic problems, and nobody wants to be there anymore. There's been an influx out of those city centers, which are not natural at all. They're full of these human structures that directly correlate to the corrupted political economy and the corrupted social structures in place all over the world. So we've got a lot of work to do. But how do we make that available to consciousness? Is it up to you to go knock on the doors of everybody and try to convince them to do emotional and mental processing? Is it up to you to go and actively ask for people to shift out of buildings that no longer serve human health? No. The best thing you can do is work on you. Because don't underestimate this. All culture starts with individuals. Doesn't matter if you're looking at the globe, the nation state, the county, the city, or even the neighborhood, or even the family. It doesn't matter. They're all made of individuals. One single person's shift saying, I am going to be as pure of a soul as possible in this body, and I'm going to love myself. I'm going to find balance. I'm going to find neutrality. I'm going to work on my trauma. I'm going to work on my ego. And every breakthrough that person has, it ripples out into consciousness. It makes it available to consciousness. And then other people get elevated into that change. You are not separate from the entirety of humanity. You are not separate from this earth. You are not separate from this solar system or the galaxy. You are not separate from the universe. Every little change you make inside of you changes the universe. This is not just esoteric thinking. This is physics. It's real. Consciousness is made of particles, and they, just like light, act both as a particle and a wave. And the changes that I've made by continuing to keep working on me with as much arrogance and worthlessness as I have, plenty of ego, ask my friends and family. I got loads. I'm unconscious about it sometimes. But, with their help, I do make changes. And in those changes, they ripple out to the people around me. They ripple out to you. They make it available for all consciousness. Your actions, your words, your deeds, your thoughts are very powerful, but even more so, your attention. Take your attention off of the media. Take your attention off of consuming anything through the eyes, nose, ears, or mouth, or skin that is not going to elevate you into a sense of more and more love. Take your attention off of those things. Put your attention on you, on yourself, on your soul, on your body. If you put your attention on those things, they change. Because your attention is precious. Everything else is a distraction. And then what happens? The relationships you have get better. They change. People who are stuck in an attention loop that's really negative, stuck in a rage loop, stuck in a hopelessness loop, they either get elevated by you and get to step out of that hamster wheel, or they don't, and they move on, and you move on. And new people come, who recognize that that self-work elevates them too, because the words and the thoughts and the attention you give them is full of love then. And they can begin to feel it and begin to receive it. And the interchange that you make changes culture. So if you want culture change, keep working on trying to get your material world to match your internal world. Surround yourself in things that elevate love, that elevate you. Surround yourself in people, places, and things that also can elevate you and need to be elevated by your attention and love. Keep working on your mental. Keep noticing those programs in your mind that run. Judgment programs, attachment, expectations that show up, resistance to things. Keep noticing them. Bow to them. When you have a little self-hate program run in your mind, bow to it. This is the tool I like to use. I bow to it and I say, thank you very much for trying to help me. Because all programs, even if they're corrupted, they run because they're trying to help you. Why? Well, they want to help you live in a corrupt, crazy society, right? That you grew up in. So we learn negative programs so we can get by. But because we're stepping out of all of that, we're letting it dissolve. We got to get out of this jail in our head. And we need to be free. And to be free, we use gratitude first. Thanks for trying to help me. I require you to shut down now because I don't need this anymore. I am the soul in charge. I intend right now to speak to myself and my body with love because that's the paradigm I will help bring to this planet. And then you take a deep breath. And one program at a time disappears and turns into stillness, a still mind. And I never believed I could have a still mind. I truly believed that was impossible. But it's not. With emotional processing, with meditation, with simple tools, knowing that the inner voice that's running, that's negative, is something I learned. It's something that was created from trauma to help me survive in a crazy, sick, wild global culture, a culture of death. Knowing that, then being able to be diligent about this work. It doesn't stop. Even if you're enlightened, it doesn't stop. You could be a saint. It still doesn't stop. You've got to upkeep this stuff. Trash bags of trauma want to come in all the time and continue to build up and turn into more ego. And that's fine. But when we go in and we keep dissolving those trash bags of trauma and dissolving the ego already there, eventually you finish with what you've created thus far. You work on your lineage stuff, but you're also going to upkeep because bad situations happen. And then you don't have to let them turn into trauma. That's the great part. The chickenpox shingles issue this past month is not traumatic for me because I could emotionally process in the moment. And I was really happy and welcoming all of the misery that was showing up because it was a wonderful chance to go as deep inside myself as possible. And when I finally realized exactly why this showed up, it was healed. Within a day, anyone who knows how shingles works, that doesn't happen. Sometimes people suffer with shingles even longer, for months. It was healed within a day. because I finally figured out why it was there, and I was able to help my little 5, 6-year-old self heal. And I was able to emotionally process that linchpin of worthlessness. And in gratitude, welcoming the pain, welcoming the illness, and finding the reason why it was showing me the way. When I found the way and I willingly took it, even if it was uncomfortable, that's when the healing began and the shingles ended, because they no longer were needed anymore. And I don't expect them to come back, because they did their job. They did the job that I needed them to do. And I'm so grateful. So, with this idea of how powerful you are, I want you to notice if you have any nagging voices in the mind, any resistance in your body to me claiming that you are that powerful, that global culture can change with your internal work. I want you to notice if you resist that, because it's showing you something deep inside, a belief system that doesn't belong there. Now, if you need further example of why an individual's inner work can be so immense, just look deeper into history. Look at the women and the men who, as they changed themselves, actually changed their whole culture. We have wonderful examples all over the place. We have Mother Teresa, we have Gandhi, we have Nikola Tesla, we have Einstein. Now, not all of these folks were perfect saints, but they certainly did work deeply on themselves regularly. Tesla was a very aesthetic person. He believed in aestheticism at the time because through his mind he found that his embodiment was made of light. But he did remain in the body and lived to a long old age and found himself and his body to be made of pure light. I encourage you to go read his very last interview that he did with a young man named John Smith. And the interview is so beautiful because he brings the young man into a state, a sense of light, that all things are made of light, including himself. And it's a magnificent way to examine how the internal work can actually change everything. And we know what Tesla's work is and how important it is and how it will continue to be important. Just one man. And then, of course, the women. We have so many wonderful women who have worked really diligently on themselves. We have the whole emotional processing paradigm and the full body enlightenment paradigm was created by women. And men also contributed to that. But the past 50 years of emotional processes have especially been well established by the feminine. So that work of those individuals, the internal work they did, ended up being manifest as tools and guidance that helped create change. I certainly would not be here in the state that I am, in a better, happier, emotional, mental, and physical state than I am without those women, without those men. That's how important those individuals are. You are no different. Doesn't matter if you're in bed. Doesn't matter if you're sick too. Doesn't matter. Your thoughts, your prayers, your attention, even if you're in bed, even if you're in pain, that attention is precious. It's so precious. Use it to elevate your spirit. Use it to elevate your embodiment, so that the two can marry finally and be one. What happens to people is really beautiful. Physical healing occurs. A youthening occurs. People literally emanate more light. It's very measurable. And you will also find it occurs for you. And if you're able to, make some little bitty moves every day to simplify your life and have it match a little more every day your internal life. Just a little tiny bit, little pile here, little bit of trash taken out there, a little cleaning of that corner today. Doesn't have to be the whole entire house all at once. And of course, those of us with families, that's impossible to get it exactly perfect. In my living room, in my children's bedroom, in my kitchen, it's full of toys, an ocean of toys. I wouldn't say that the toys match my internal world, but nonetheless, I do make spaces of sanctuary for myself, such as my little office here. And these are going to continue to change and evolve just like me, matching a little better my internal world until perhaps the best place for me to be is in the woods. And of course, that's not realistic, but it's the idea of your material world affects your internal world and vice versa. Take that seriously and do the best you can to help the two be balanced and match. It's a good mindset to keep and to move forward as we begin to simplify our economy, simplify our politics, simplify our social structures and our language to be compassionate. Our infrastructure, too, will need to be simpler and more oriented to the vulnerable, such as children. What would it look like if our cities were rebuilt to be there for children first? It would look very different. And that's what I think will happen eventually. So a long time ago, one of the colleges I went to is called Seattle Central Community College. It's on Capitol Hill in Seattle. It's actually where the CHOPS protest autonomous zone was created. And I wasn't surprised because I'd gone to college there for a long time. And knowing that the teachers there would have been wanting to help organize peaceful dialogue. That's how the teachers function there, especially the anthropology department. And having been there, I took a class on terrorism, would look at that kind of thing there, and very progressive viewpoint on such a concept. There was an entire anthropology class on just terrorism, right? We needed to understand what terrorism was. It's not just one thing. There's different kinds of terrorism. There's terrorism when you're in a domestic violence situation. We terrorize our own selves with our negative programming. That's a type of terror. There's all kinds of layers of terrorism. Well, we got really steeped in this class. There was about 25 people that started in the class and only 10 finished because it was so depressing. We spent an entire quarter looking at terrorism. It made us more and more depressed and sad and sick every day. And my question constantly was, how do we change this? Because I was at the beginnings of being obsessed with change. How do we change this? Well, my teacher, Mohammed Al-Madani, he might still be teaching there. He's from Saudi Arabia, and he was exiled from his own family because he started to speak out against oppression there. And he became American. He was the very last student of a famous anthropological theorist called Marvin Harris. And I was one of the students that took that theory through Muhammad and worked with that specifically. So I was very lucky to have him as a teacher. So he understood terrorism better than most because he'd witnessed it in many different forms. As we got towards the end of the class, many people had quit, more than half. They couldn't stand it. It was too dark, too depressing. I began to create an art project of these 5 towers. 5 towers, the 5 types of terrorism, and then a 6th tower that was. And I'd created these towers and I put pictures on them of what that terrorism looks like on the ground. It's incredibly brutal. I really subjected myself to a lot of darkness at that time. And I couldn't figure out what the conclusion of my paper and my project really were. I didn't know what to put on that last tower of solutions until I had to give my presentation. And I asked Source God, show me what the solution is. I don't know. I'm a novice. I'm lost. And as I was leaving my apartment, there was a small picture of my son as a baby, his beautiful face, right there on the shelf next to the front door. And as I stepped to go out the door without any conclusion for my project, I saw that picture and I grabbed it. I went to school and stepped into class, and I realized I knew what the solution was. So I told everyone what I'd learned about these 5 kinds of terrorism. And then I put the picture of my son in front of those towers, those pictures of horrible, horrible things. I put the picture of my son in front of them. And I said, the solution is that we must rebuild our whole culture, our infrastructure, our political economy, our social structure, and our beliefs and language around the support of children and other vulnerable people. If we do that, everything will change. There will not be any kind of terrorism necessary for dramatic change to occur. The answer is the children. To protect and build our cultures around the children will keep our human race alive, but thriving. And why would we do that? Because we're children. We are children of the earth. Mother Earth and Source God are our creator parents. Source has created you. You are a child of light. The earth nurtures our bodies. She is our mother, and she's never given up on us, even though she could have lots of times. She feeds us and nourishes us. When we become dependent on humans and corrupted structures, then we've left our own home behind, the one that nourishes us every single day. Just like St. Francis of Assisi pointed out, why do you worry so much? God feeds the birds. Don't you think God will feed you? Hunter-gatherers had extremely strong, healthy bodies and still do. There's many left. Strong and healthy bodies, no degenerative diseases, more relaxing time every day, more time to love each other, more time to nurture children. They don't have cities. They don't have pets. They don't have stationary buildings that are up off the ground full of stuff. And they, in comparison to the modern human, it's like night and day. What do they concern themselves with? Finding nourishment from the earth and loving each other and their children. They base everything off teaching the next generation all of the wondrous spiritual, mental, and physical skills that they have. Their gut biomes are more diverse than any that can be found in any city. Their happiness quotient is huge. So I encourage you to know that that's the path. Allow yourself to be loved as a child of God, as a child of earth. Allow that. Know that that's where we're going. Innocence. Innocence is our core. We can have that back. It's always been there. We call it the soul. That's what that love is. That's what's for us. And that's how we're going to end things like terrorism. Good. In this last hour, I like to answer your questions. What questions have been coming up? How are you? What's going on in your life? What big questions have come up for you? And then in our last 15 minutes, let's build a pillar of light. My dear friend Michelle in the UK, she's been connecting with the cetaceans, all the whales and dolphins and porpoises. And their energetic is so beautiful. I want you to tap into it with me because we're going to be building a pillar of light with them, in co-creation with them, which is something we haven't done before. Usually we just include humans on the building of the pillar of light. We might build pillars for cetaceans and for the land or for the people, but we haven't built any with anybody else. So I think it's time for that. And they have asked me to do it in the South Pacific today, just tapping into it because it's really deep. It's really deep, and water magnifies light. And a cool part about a pillar of light that we can create, it's so easy. You can create your own anytime with anybody that you wish. So once you've learned how to do it, you can do it anytime. But the pillars of light are basically like living prayers. They're fourth dimensional spiritual structures that transmit the intentions we put into it. And it's connected and for all things. So although we might build a pillar of light in a specific place for a specific cause, those pillars are connected to all consciousness. And so it's not that they don't help nourish everything else. And that's really nice and beautiful. But this is a pillar that is about freedom. I think we're being asked to do that today. Freedom and innocence. Freedom and innocence are the two energetics that come up, the two frequencies, emotions that come up for us. And so we'll do that towards the end of our time together. So we have a question here. It says, Caroline says, thank you for sharing what you've been experiencing. It's very helpful. I woke up this morning and gradually realized that the pain I've been in for about 6 weeks is almost gone. My knees and hips and shoulders had been so painful. It felt like I was going to freeze up completely, which I couldn't allow to happen. But forcing these joints to move was quite difficult. Since this morning, it feels so much different. I'm wondering what may have been happening on a planetary level. Do you have any insight around this? I think, Carolyn, that it's inside you. Something has shifted. Don't look outside yourself for this answer. Nothing is outside the self. It's all one. But that's really hard for the mind to think about. It does experience things as being one thing or another. And it's natural for the mind to feel separate. But I want instead for you to look outside the self for the answer, go inside. What has changed over the past 6 months for you on the internal part? What emotional shifts have you gone through? Have you been noticing a buildup and a crescendo of frustration or pain when it comes to recapitulating old past things? Or what different things have caused this pain, knowing that it has an emotional, mental cause, right? And the relief that's happening. What shifts did you make over these past 6 months as you've welcomed the pain and tried to process things? Is that what ended up causing the shift of pain out of your body? And usually that's the case. It's not suddenly that the collective has shifted and you're going to feel better. It's actually that something shifted inside of you, and it happened to also look like the collective's changing. And really, the biggest change for the collective at the moment over the past 6 months has been that people are aware of the formlessness that's happening because they're watching systems crumble. And they were crumbling before any kind of shutdown. They were crumbling way longer before that. So now it's all amped up and magnified by such things. And it can't be blamed on a shutdown whatsoever. So the crumbling is simply the physicality of, or the measurable pieces of the formlessness that's starting to take over. And that's what's occurring. So I think that you'll find it inside yourself too. You're dissolving a little more, and the pain is disappearing because you're not resisting the dissolving going on as much as you were before. So that's something to consider. If you resist something, it's going to be painful. And I think it's quite amazing that we get to welcome now the ninth dimension. So Mario points out, if the ninth dimension of consciousness is available to us on Earth, if we choose to manifest it, is this because we can cast our net to the right, as in the right brain or righteousness? No. The fact is that all of the dimensions are always available. And many of you know that I purposefully tell people, stop trying to leave the 3D. You're not going to leave the 3D and suddenly live in 5D, and no one that I know of except maybe 2 other people like my teacher Lucia are talking about the ninth dimension. But all 12 dimensions, mystically, if we were going to talk about the science of dimensions, that's a whole different another ball game, okay? So when I talk about dimensions in this way, I'm talking about mysticism, which is a study in of itself. All 12 dimensions are always available in our bodies. They didn't go anywhere. The only thing blocking us, Mario, is trauma and ego. It keeps us from fully experiencing and embodying all these dimensions all at once. And so our chance now is to keep dissolving from the inside out, keep processing, emotionally process, mentally meditate and still the mind, and you'll be able to dissolve so much more, so much faster, especially now that the earth itself is elevating all of this to be available more easily. That's the only thing that's different, is the earth itself, although she has access to all 12 dimensions, She's emanating, radiating the ninth dimension, encouraging us, come a little closer to formlessness. Feel what it's like to stand in 9 dimensions all at once. That's what she's asking for. And so eventually, the human race will regain our capacity, which was always there. It was lost through the corruption and subjugation we faced. But that's not necessary anymore. Now we can regain our capacity to embody all 12 dimensions at once. And that, my friends, is the job. It's the ancient job of the human to enjoy and learn in all 12 dimensions at once. Okay, so I'm kind of scrolling back through chat to look at, to see if there's any questions here. Good, so I'm gonna pop over to YouTube and see if there's any questions there too. Oh, wait, Jody says, hi, Elizabeth, can you speak about the relationship between the body lineage and the soul lineage in terms of how we embody the qualities of life force and the resolutions and transcendence of disease or dis-ease? In other words, is our present embodiment a reflection of both the soul's lineage and the body's familial lineage? How does body DNA and soul DNA intersect? Wonderful question. I just love that. Good topic. DNA itself is a technology. The soul doesn't have DNA. The soul is made of particles of consciousness. DNA is a technology which was created, gave access to souls, gave them access to all 12 dimensions at once, because the beings who created it wanted to experience that. DNA was created for 2 reasons: to experience all 12 dimensions at once instead of just one by one, way more fun, and to remember and retain the memories of all the embodiments, the familial lineage, to retain the memories and experiences of the familial lineage, so that when you entered into an embodiment like this, a precious embodiment, a humanoid DNA embodiment, that you wouldn't have to relearn all the basics every time. You'll have access to the memory of the lineage, and that builds up as innate knowing, what we might call intuitive knowing. Okay, so that's what the familial lineage looks like. Now, if all of our ancestors have been traumatized, you're going to remember a lot of that. You're going to remember persecution and plague. You're going to remember famine and warfare. You're going to remember survival, because that's written in our DNA. And that's also what we're helping to clean up at the moment, not just our own trauma, right? The soul's memory is separate. So a soul has its own memories, not inherited. And whether this be only in single lifetime you have, or the trillionth, it doesn't matter. The soul has its own memory because it's made of particles of consciousness. And these two, when they intersect, that's why someone will look quite different than, say, their siblings, because they have a different soul. But the lineage DNA is going to be defined by that soul's intelligence too. And as the soul evolves, gets smarter, gets brighter and lighter, the body changes too. The DNA is informed also. So they marry quite nicely, and they work wonderful together for consciousness and learning, which is the whole point of the universe, simply learning. That's why relationship exists. And there's relationship all through all the layers of reality. So those are the two intersections in soul history. People have names for that. I think some people call it the Akashic records. And then there's the DNA history itself. And marrying of them creates such a unique individual that there's no one like you, a beautiful child of God, no one like you in this universe. Like my mom likes to say, you're special just like everybody else. Good. All right, let me go check on our YouTube friends here, see how they're going. So our friend, which says, cultivating Northern Michigan, very cool. Notice things like lack of self-worth, self-sabotage, inner child shutdowns. What about sound healing to clear that out? This is a good question. Thank you. Because it's really important to acknowledge that physical healing or like sound healing or getting healing done on your body and your mind and your spirit, that's very supportive, but you don't want to bypass the importance of going into the self-sabotage, going into the inner child and the shutdowns and the self-worth stuff, okay? Because if we don't go into it and really go for ourselves without anybody's help, you can get help to walk through it, but you got to do it on your own. Like I can guide you step by step, but you're going to have to do the feeling of it, right? You're going to have to feel the self-sabotage and find it in your body. Put your attention on it. Go there. Go all the way in. Welcome it. Let it dissolve with your attention. Somebody can walk you through that, but you're always going to have to go into it. So anything that comes in, as a support mechanism, such as sound healing, that can help you feel better, but usually it's temporary until you do the permanent work. So the permanent work is the emotional processing and the meditation or prayer. That's the permanent work. Everything else helps to elevate and support that to be done. So sound healing can really get you into a position where you're strong enough to go into the self-sabotage on your own. Or massages can get you to the point where you're strong enough to be able to face that deep fear inside of you or that pain, that ego. So we don't want to go in and say, I'm going to have this person go heal me. I'm going to have this person go take this away. I'm going to have this person take my karmic debt away. I'm going to have this person take away the negative energies from lifetimes or entities, or that's only going to be temporary. If you want it to be permanent, you've got to go into the reasons and the linchpin level stuff deep inside of why that entity is even in your field, why the self-sabotage occurred in the first place. It's deep inside of you. Why the karmic debt exists there so you can learn from it. You don't want to have people take this stuff away from you. It's only ever going to be temporary. It'll come back around because you need to learn about it. That's why it was created. You created it so that you could learn and finally be finished with self-sabotage and self-worth issues, right? And all of it's for learning. Self-sabotage can't hurt you. It can't hurt you. It's simply a frequency. Does it feel? No. It's a peak separation frequency, a big peak one, right? But there's a reason deep inside why it keeps occurring. And only you can go in and finally pull that plug and not allow self-sabotage to have power over you anymore, because you're going to put your attention so deeply on it and welcome it because it exists that it won't have power over you. And that's how it works. So Usually what I'd like to do, friends, I always want to make sure you have the tools. Every single time I do a circle call, I try to make sure that the tools I give freely are available to you. And so underneath every circle call, sometimes I have to update it because the links, YouTube doesn't like to make the links nice and easy. But under every circle call are all of the exact tools I use for this processing work. And it's all laid out for you. And make sure you have everything you need. You don't need to have a paid session with me to get this information. It's free. So I just make sure you have it. That way you can have this be done permanently. Won't that be nice? Because it feels really good to be able to have those tools and know that you can do this permanently for yourself and not have to face the same stuff over and over, right? Good. So Susan asks a very valid question. Are you saying we have to become hunter-gatherers now? No, I think that's impossible, right? But we're going to find something that's kind of a combination of everything, right? We're going to have to restructure stuff. This is going to take generations, my friends. We are seeing changes now. It's true. We're seeing a lot of crumbling. We're seeing a lot of co-creative work happening. A lot of collaboration is going on too. Don't underestimate the human race who's able to build things just as they're also falling apart. We're pretty awesome that way. But the reason I pointed out hunter-gatherers is because there's this misnomer that the ancient people were not healthy and that they weren't capable and that they weren't intelligent. And that's not at all true, because we still have hunter-gatherers even now in Central Africa called the Kungsan, and others in South America too, and other places, even in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, for example. So a lot of these peoples, we look at them and say, oh, they're not modern, blah, blah. But they're actually, many of them are a lot better off mentally, emotionally, physically than we ever have been in modern cities and society. But we're going to have to do a combo, and we're going to need to refocus whatever we create with all of our modern tools. I've always seen that we're not going to just toss out all technology, right? That wouldn't be very smart. Then we can't get on Zoom together every month, right? But we got to ask ourselves, what is the technology that's going to nurture the natural human, the children, the most vulnerable? What are those technologies? What are the technologies that are going to help my mind, my heart, my gut, and my body? A lot of them we're going to have to modify quite a bit in order to make them actually function that way, like cell phones and things like that. A lot of work done, a lot of creative effort. It's all very exciting, I think. But don't fall for the transhuman agenda. Don't fall for the fact that somehow we got to put our mind, body, spirit and meld it with a machine or with mechanized structures. Don't fall for that. That's a whole movement that is really going to lead to the destruction of humanity. And even they know that. They'll say that outwardly, the folks who really buy into that mindset. They don't mind the destruction of humanity. It's the continuation of the culture of death. Instead, we must look at how we can become more one with nature while still maintaining what we learned technologically. And that's the challenge. And many, many, many people are putting their focus and attention on that. And so whatever moves you make from here doesn't mean we're going to toss out everything we've created at all. We're still probably going to have modern houses and things. We're still probably going to have all these different kinds of tech, but they're going to function very differently. We're going to have different kinds of tech that don't create waste or cause subjugation. That's the challenge. So we want to run everything we create from here through that framework in order to make it as natural and as elevating and supportive as possible to the embodiment, the natural embodiment of the human, not this supernatural technological human that is, half a robot, okay? So, and we're also not going to go so far backwards that we all have to learn how to hunt. That's not going to work either. There's a middle way. There's a middle way, and we can keep asking ourselves these important questions as we start to create more and more platform systems and technology in our lives. It is complicated, but I think allowing it to be simple in the mind as in just the right way to say, is this helping my mind? Is it helping my emotional body? Is it helping my heart and my gut? Is it helping my natural human structure that exists and is perfect? Is it helping to support that? Is it helping harmony and thriving with the earth? And that's what we need to constantly run everything create through that framework. So that's how it will change the face of the planet. But it's not going to look like super ancient Africa or deep in the jungle either. Good question. So Becky says, what has been your connection with the elementals over the past few weeks? How's that served you in your journey this month? So a lot of people are seeing more and more beings, honestly. There's so many. And the elementals are becoming more and more accessible. And the reason why is because all that formlessness energy has kind of been filling up like a hot bath, right? Fills up, fills up, fills up. Now it's like sky high at this point. So we're really deep in it. And a lot of new experiences are going to happen, more contact, new skill sets, and more clairvoyance, more ability to feel. Currently, I can't say that I had worked really intimately with any specific elementals this past month, Peggy, but I know many people are, and they're seeing more, and so am I. And I've had new contact with new beings that I've never seen before, and I'm not surprised over this month. So I'm just welcoming it. And I think that whatever shows up is there because it's here to continue to elevate the formless nature of Earth. Many of these beings are not here for humans. Wow, we're not the center of the universe. A lot of beings are here for the Earth and not for humans at all. And so they happen to be available. Doesn't mean we can't connect with your heart. And if you're not sure if something is good or not, trust your heart and your gut. Ask your heart and your gut. They will tell you if it's safe or not. And remember, we have our human agenda, and that's most important right now. Everyone else's agenda, sometimes it supports humans, sometimes it doesn't. But what's most important right now is the human agenda. And you can ask, what's the most important agenda on your plate, dear new alien that has shown up or whatever? And if they aren't here for the elevation of humankind, then let them know you're busy. You've got a different agenda. And it starts inside of you. So I think the recognition that this is occurring is very good. And I expect more and more to be seen and available. But remember, keep the eye on the ball. The human agenda, being able to thrive in harmony with the earth, is key right now. That way we don't get distracted. So hopefully that answered your question. Good, good. Yeah, I like that, Linda. That's a very smart concept here. She said, Healers can only bring us to ourselves. That's right. A good healer will elevate you to be empowered. And that's so key. And certainly I've really needed that from my friends and my family and other healers too. And it's been available because I've not resisted that help. And I tend to resist help because I have a lot of arrogance and thinking I can do everything all by myself, right? Well, we need each other. So we have to do the inner work for ourselves, but the rest of it, we can help each other with. And we can even help guide others into the inner world of the self and heal there too. Good. I like that. Someone says, I think it's Daki, says, hunter-gatherers are heart hunters and gratitude gatherers. That's how we can be a new kind of gatherer, right? That we're hunting down the energetics of the heart, and we are looking for and gathering gratitude. Good. So Milena says, I'm flooded, pun intended, with memories and insights connected with Atlantis. Not necessarily visual, it's more like an inner knowing. I wonder if something is emerging on a collective level or if it's more personal. I'd be very interested in what you know about Atlantis. Well, I think we'll run out of time if we go into that history. But a lot of people, and here's what's cool. If you're doing the inner work, and I know you are, Milena, if you're doing the inner work, you're going to remember more, unless this is your only time here. So that's totally plausible for someone to have only one lifetime. It's possible and true. And so that is very important. And I didn't think the two could exist, but they do. They do. And so with the inner work, there's more remembrance, at least the remembrance that you are a soul here in this body, and that the body is basically the form of the body is defined by the soul. So that remembrance begins to become more available with emotional processing and meditation. But there's also the memories of past lives that show up. And the more inner work you do, the more you remember. And it will get more and more detailed and more specific. And you will have more and more clear visuals on that kind of thing. So keep doing the inner work, because that's why it's occurring. Furthermore, on a collective level, as we take it from the personal, it's happening that more and more people are doing the inner work, right? So on a collective level, there's going to be more remembrance. There's more and more and more archaeology to point out what's really happened on this planet. You know, the Earth is like a giant Etch-a-Sketch. You know, it has floods and shakeups and deserts and rocks and lots of different ways to put everything underground and hide it, so that it's harder and harder to find what really happened in the past. That's why good archaeology and its evolution has given us more and more in the past 2 decades than ever combined in the whole history of archaeology, which isn't that long. So, for example, they found Atlantis. It's right outside of Gibraltar, just like Plato said. They found it. Go look it up. They found that an entire city destroyed underwater in the ocean, whole city. The walls were the exact same description as Plato said, and it's exactly where Plato told them that it would be. We just didn't have the technology to go do the underwater archaeology at that until now. They found a whole other pyramid, y'all, under the sand of Egypt. Of course, they all knew it was there for the whole time, and now they're just finally telling us, but they're making it sound like it's a new discovery. It's not. Everybody's known that's there. Anybody who's in that whole circle knew that it was there, but they're telling everybody finally. This is what we might call disclosure. Disclosure is not just about aliens, it's also about our past. And they found evidence of human beings being even older than 300,000 years old, which they are. They're at least 500,000 years old. And so, more and more scientific physical evidence really showing us just how advanced and just how long our human history is. And this idea that somehow we're the pinnacle is simply untrue. And the physicality of the evidence is available now. So more and more of that will be made clear and made available. I mean, even if you go look this up, you can even find it too, that a few years ago, actually, really excellent archaeological evidence was presented for the existence of Bigfoot. And that was presented finally in a public way on an archaeological forum, in a real scientific journal, that these bones they found had teeth marks and teeth. You can reconstruct an entire being from just teeth marks. And that's exactly what they did. And they said, that, the only thing that could have done this would have had to be a hominid that's bipedal and at least between 8 and 9 feet tall. Ding, ding. So again, it's out there and it's getting more and more public and disclosed what we are learning more and more in the whole world of anthropology and archaeology. And it's very exciting. So it's all of the above. Everybody's remembering more because of the formlessness. We're finding out more because of the physical and because of technology, but we're also remembering more as individuals as we work on ourselves. It's very beautiful. Good. So Elise says, when I pass by a group of young ones with skateboards around 15 or 16-year-olds, and one girl said to another girl, well, you can also choose not to be sad. Then a boy said, or you can choose not to be sad. Or you can choose to be sad, or you can choose not to be sad. It made me happy to see how kids of this time think. It took me years and years to get there. And that's so nice. Young ones are so precious, and they have a lot to share. They're really, really adaptable, and they're figuring out how important choice really is, right? And we never want to give that up. The freedom to choose starts within the self, but it percolates out to create compassionate political economies and social structures. And that is something that we can really treasure. That is gold. So Enid asks, what do we know about what will happen to souls who've been suckered into transhuman agendas? No judgment on them, right? Because they're choosing to learn about that. So we can take what I just said. If someone's choosing to learn about something that we might not only do we might disagree with it, but we might hate it or deeply dislike it at least, right? Don't judge people. They're making choices they can learn. The soul needs to learn about some of these things, and sometimes the soul has to go into some pretty dark corners to go figure this stuff out. Just speak soul to people. Know that souls have a choice, that they can learn whatever they choose to learn from, and that they'll create it. Don't take that choice away. Instead, share with them a different choice, one that might be more appealing. And that can be something very special. So you can choose not to judge the people that we might disagree with. We can choose that. And even better, we can choose to give them more choices. Maybe ones they were never exposed to, right? So that's why creating and teaching and getting out there, sharing what you know is so important right now. You don't have to do it for money. You can do it because you care. You don't have to get out of bed either. It's pretty cool. We have good technology to be able to get information out. Just to, even if you share it with your friends or your family, that makes an impact. Don't underestimate your sharing of your choices and what options there are. A lot of times people never even thought of it. They never even thought that the transhuman agenda would be negative. They think it's so cool that they could have a chip in their head, you know? So just always know that if someone's making a choice, it's not up to us to judge them on it. It's up to us to give them other choices and to know that they're trying to learn. That's all we're doing. I think that's the best reaction we can have to that. All right, one last question, and then we're going to build our pillar of light. So Susan says, thank you so much for a profound talk. Can you speak to the mask social distancing piece? I'm not participating. I stay at home. As an empath, it's too hard to look at all the controlled people. This is hard for me. I can't go to needed doctor's appointments. When will this be over? I think that's a very important question. And I think also it's difficult for me to speak to it because there's so much division about it. And as a scientist, I want clear science, but even the scientific world has been corrupted. So it's really a personal choice. And again, I think it goes back to choices, right? And people are wanting to have choices, and there's a balance between respecting others' choices and choosing something that might go in a different direction than them. But we need to teach each other. We need to teach each other how to treat one another. There can be a deep respect for each choices, and then also a co-creative effort towards more healing. I don't have a clear answer for you about any of that. It's inside of you. You must make your own choices on this. You must trust your soul and your gut and your heart. You must trust Source. And in that trust, you'll be given opportunities to be able to act with great compassion, even if the choices of the people around you go against what you believe in, or go for it. It doesn't matter. The more compassion, the better. And the less judgment, the better. If people are choosing a certain activity, they're trying to learn about it and how it works in their life. And we need to be gentle about that. It can be very disheartening, I realize, when choices seem to be disappearing. But that is why freedom is on the table at the moment. And the freedom to make choices is so vital. And we are finally acting this out as a species all over the globe. Will we limit our choices, or will we expand them? And it starts with you. Emotionally process your frustration on this. Emotionally process your pain and your judgment. Emotionally process being judged. That one can be sometimes harder. It hurts to be judged. Emotionally process this, get as clear as you can without charge. If you can go out into the world without a charge on it, then you're going to be able to stand in your choice and teach others to be compassionate, not reactive. not angry, not violent. So I think it's a reckoning around choice and freedom right now from many directions, from technology and politics and economics and social structures. So I think that humans will always need to have human contact. We cannot end our cultures over any kind of mandate. We must continue to elevate our culture, and human contact is part of that. So we'll see. We'll see how this unfolds. I wish I had a more clear answer for you. I just know the tools that I'm using right now to be able to move forward still hold true. And that's really key. Good. And yeah, I think you're right, Karen. It's always about community, and it can be online, it can be in person. All of these things are very key. Okay, very good. Yeah, and me too, Linda. Asking for help is really hard. And it's probably one of the greatest lessons I've had this year is to be willing to receive it. Not only to ask, but to receive it, right? And I'm always getting better at it. And I'm glad that you're seeing that for yourself. It's very important. Good. All right, let's build our pillar of light, my friends. And thank you for your very powerful and important questions today. I think that they are valid and important and really special. And I encourage you to go back when this pops up onto the YouTube. If you go to YouTube, Seer and Scientist, Elizabeth Wood, Seer and Scientist, pop that into the YouTube. Then you go to the playlist, Circle Community Calls on that channel. You'll see all the replays of all of our circle calls. Usually this gets uploaded in a little while after our call is finished, but I encourage you to go back to it and kind of pull out some of the tools we talked about today, and share it as you wish. It's free. So I hope that you will share it if you feel it's useful. All right, so pillar of light. Let's come together. Let's just take a deep breath and just kind of disconnect from some of these troubling but important issues that have been coming up for us today. Wow, I can really feel all of you very intensely. It's lovely. Every month this year so far, it's gotten more and more intense and more detailed, more intimate, the feeling part. And now, of course, being in the body, being able to feel even more. So I'd like us to come down into the South Pacific. And there's this cool island that many of you know. It's that people call it Easter Island. It's actually called Rapa Nui. Rapa Nui is a very interesting culture. And I want you, if you have some time, as like a kind of a mystical thing, go look at the history of Rapa Nui. It is not at all what we had been originally told, which is that everyone was fine and suddenly they all died off. That's not what happened. What we discovered was everything was fine on the island. They had a thriving, intensely amazing, and brilliant culture with technology we still don't understand. And with the colonials, we'll call them, with the advent of colonialism, people came to the island. And because it's so hard to get to, because it's like literally in the middle of the South Pacific, because it's so hard to get to, the colonials, they visited for a little bit and then they left. Well, they didn't come back for like a long time. I forget how long it was. When they did come back, it was as if it was night and day. The whole place devastated and hardly anyone was there. And they thought that the collapse had happened on its own. And that's not what occurred. The collapse had happened because the colonials had spread disease by being there. And so the disease ended up magnifying existing problems. And that's an important piece. Disease alone doesn't usually collapse societies. It's that it can magnify existing issues to the point of collapse. Now, of course, the Rapa Nuians who were still alive, all of their ancestors still live there on the island. And it's become both a colonialized and a native, a very strong native combination of a new society who's very strong. So, and who really has discovered even more and more about their history. So I want to point that out. And that's where we're going to build our pillar of light. But we're going to do it out in the ocean, just north of that island. So just north of the island, so we could actually turn around and see the island. And we're going to do it in the water because water magnifies things, magnifies frequency, it magnifies spiritual structure. But I think it's important, and I wasn't sure where we were going to do it, but then the story of Rapa Nui, because I kept hearing South Pacific, the story of Rapa Nui came to mind. The disease magnified the problems that were already there so that they could be finally addressed, even though it turned into a kind of a collapse. The culture changed, it didn't disappear. And that's what's happening to us. It's magnifying. It's what happens to me. It magnified what was already there until there was finally a collapse. I could not face the worthlessness issues I have been dealing with, still currently am. And I could not face them. It became an emergency. I had to face them finally. And that's what's going on all over the globe. See how it's not personal, it's universal every time. So join me here, Rapa Nui, big, huge, cool, amazing statues. And they all had eyes. People don't realize that they had eyes. And big, huge bodies too. So we're going north of there and we're inviting some more beings to join us this time. The cetaceans, the whales, the dolphins, the porpoises. Now, why would we do that? Well, these particular beings really embody immense amount of love and compassion. And they truly do have true emotion and culture. Humans are not the only one with culture. And so all of them are known for something very specific. Whales, dolphins, and porpoises are known for altruism. We have evidence on video now. We didn't used to. It was always through stories. That whales are saving seals from killer whales. And we have literal video evidence of altruism. We have evidence that whales also have treated humans that way too. Whales have saved people. Like Job was a good one. Ancient stories about how the whales and dolphins save people, right? And save humans from sharks. There's all these modern stories of people getting pushed out of the way by dolphins and whales as sharks would show up and things like that. So altruism. And what is altruism? Altruism isn't us just helping each other. It's not. It's deeper than that. It's a deeper concept. And let this really sink in. Altruism is the fact that your liberation and mine are tied together. My friend showed me this great quote, and I can't remember who it's from, but it is true. And that is what altruism is. That's what the cetaceans have to offer us. Your liberation and mine are tied together. Our liberation and theirs are tied together. The liberation of the earth and the liberation of humankind are tied together. And so we're going to go farther than just freedom and choices. We're going to go into liberation. So the energetic of liberation is our first energetic, our foundational energetic. So I want you to imagine us standing in a circle just north of Rapa Nui. And we're going to go into the gut mind. The gut mind is our connection to the earth. It's where all the bacteria, that's their main city. They're in every part of your body. But the main gut mind is where the bacteria, all those pounds and pounds of bacteria in your gut, that's where they talk to you. And they're from the earth. They are symbiotically having a relationship with your body, but their job is to help you survive in harmony with nature. And so that's who we're using at the moment, and all of their consciousness and the power of your gut and your body. And so we're grounding ourselves down, and I want you to pull up the energy of the feeling of liberation. And wherever it might be in the body, bring it into the gut. Allow it to turn into a powerful light. And now we're going to project that light with a deep breath into the center of our circle, along with all of our cetacean friends. And we're asking them to come and join us in this and use their gut mind to bring liberation forth out into this ocean pillar of light. Let's project liberation now as the foundation of our pillar with a deep breath. Wow, that made the right side of my face heat up, and it made my mouth water. Wow. What I see is interesting because there was all this crazy swirling from deep in the ocean, which I suppose is the cetacean involvement. And then there was swirling from us, and it all came into the center. And then it created like this very still looking platform. And it's a nice, strong square, but it's very still. It looks like a gold platform. It's very still. And I think that's important. Stillness. We can attain and remain in a liberated state in stillness. Its reaction is movement, right? Triggers are movement. We call it having a charge on the emotional body. Negative programs are spinning, hamster wheels spinning in the mind. Polarities, they, rock back and forth or spin. Stillness. This energy, this foundation to our pillar of light is still. I think that's very key here. Good. All right, we're coming up into the heart. We're going to pull up not just unconditional love, but the unconditional love of true altruism, of true acceptance. In cetacean culture, everyone is celebrated. Everyone belongs. You will rarely find cetaceans not in some kind of community. Sometimes they'll move from one community to another. Also, humans do that too. But you'll always find them in community, and they don't have judgment. They don't have ego. So they're not judging anybody. If a baby whale is born and an albino, it's celebrated just like everybody else, even if it looks totally different. And then they're all friends with each other too. You'll find whales and dolphins actually are deeply friendly and interactive. So they're not just accepting of each other in their own species, they're accepting of other species too. Dolphins enjoy being around humans. Whales love to watch us and be with us. It's really quite amazing. And that's the energy I want you to bring into your heart. This exciting, very innocent altruism and unconditional love, right? Good. And now that you feel it, I want you to project it with a deep breath to the center of our pillar together. Wow. This is cool. Let me count how big this is. So I see this. It almost looks like a crystal, but it's not. It's flowing. It's like it's made of water, but it's a flower, and it's got 6 petals to it, and all of the petals are flowing, and they reach out. The petals will form, and then there's these trickles of water coming from them, and it's all clear. You can see through the whole thing, and each of those streams is going to some different direction on the planet. How cool! That's really neat. It's a living thing, this compassionate altruism. Good. All right, now let's come up into the brain, mind, and third eye. Also a handy mind, right? We've got our 3 minds, brain, heart, and gut, that we use for our pillar building. And so from the mind, non-judgment, right? Non-judgment came up today as very important. And being able to be in a state of non-judgment in order to elevate freedom and choice. So that's the kind of non-judgment we're going to project. It's a compassionate non-judgment, a neutrality that elevates freedom and choice. So if you can imagine that or feel that, let it come up into the mind. And now let's project it to the very top of our pillar. There's a lot of joy in this, and I'm so glad we invited our friends to come with us. Good. Non-judgment that elevates freedom and choice. And now with a deep breath, let's project that to the top now. There's another flower that has occurred. And it's just as big as the other one, and we're talking about really big here. Like this platform at the bottom, it's like a half a mile wide. The flower's just as big, and the top flower also is just as big, except it's not as wide. It looks like a bud that hasn't opened yet. What will this bud become? If this bud is humankind, we don't know yet. But it's going to bloom. It's going to bloom through non-judgment and the elevation of freedom and choice. It's going to bloom into some new kind of human culture, new kind of humanity. Not a transhuman, a purified human, an innocent humanity, a humanity that builds cities based around kids, a humanity that builds economic systems that elevate the vulnerable, a humanity whose political systems are equally as innocent pure, and kind. If you can begin to imagine it and hope for it, then it nurtures this bloom so it can get bigger and show us what it's really made of, what it really looks like, and how it feels. I think this is so special. And thank you. Thank you for joining me on this today. Now, from your heart, any other intentions that you have for any people, causes, places, beings, things, animals, plants, I welcome you to put some of your intentions right now from your heart into this pillar to help bolster it, to help define it. And over time, you're welcome to come back to it and add more. You can even change your intentions if you like, whatever needs to happen. It's a living thing. It doesn't go away. It exists in the fourth dimension, the dimension of the creation of the heart, through our will, through our imagination. It remains there, just north of Rapa Nui, so we can find it. And it will continue to connect to all of the consciousness on the planet, for the planet and for the humans and for all of the animals and plants, for nature. And of course, this is something wonderful that you and I have created together. We've co-created it as a group, and it's something that will create change. So the inner work is always number one, but what wonderful things can we create around us that will continue to elevate humanity in its move towards purification and innocence, in its move to become children of God again? That's what this is for. And so let us put any intentions into the heart of our pillar. Let them flow out to the 6 directions. Good. And let it be so with a deep breath. And let's disconnect ourselves from our structure we've made so it can be its thing, that its own special living thing. We disconnect our mind, our heart, and our gut, and our whole body and field now, so that it can do what it needs to do without our attention. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for coming today and joining me and asking such profound questions. Thank you for being you. Thank you for helping build this pillar of light. I hope you'll come join me on the circle where we can talk more often. Otherwise, I will see you next month. And you might like to come to the 7-day retreat. That starts on the 18th. But our circle call for September will be on the 27th of September, the last Sunday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And so I will see you again, either on the circle, at the retreat, or at the next community call we do on the 27th. Good. I love you all. Namaste and thank you. Thank you for your inner work. It's so precious, and so are you. Mwah.